web stream broadcast if the network is falling down again, and if you're still experiencing problems. But again, our technicians are working on it, so it should be solved soon, I hope. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'll leave the word again to Kim for the second session. Thanks.
Okay, welcome back. If you do manage to get these links working, as long as you don't close the browser window, the model will still work. If you lose Wi-Fi access, but you've got the model open in your browser, you can still use it. Also, the models are not going to go away, so you can follow these links anytime afterwards. They're always available, and just carry on using them. So I think what I should do then is show you what one of these does. Still not hearing me? Okay. Sorry. You do need a latest version browser for this. It won't work in IE 8, for example. You need IE 9 or above. Other browsers, as far as I know, are perfectly okay. And what you get is you get a working model that looks a bit like this. I'll just zoom out on this. This is the IT support company. So here we have, there's the clients at the top, there's the win rate, there's the loss rate, and there's the service demand, and there's the pressure on staff. Down here you've got the staff and the staff losses, and that's pretty much it. There's a later version of the model which I've also included in the slide deck, which includes the calculation of revenue and profits. It also includes some intangibles to do with reputation and staff morale. But that's basically what you get. And you hit the reset buttons, make sure you're back at the beginning, and you play it. So at this point here, you can see that pressure on staff is just beginning to build up here. So maybe if you're a thoughtful chief executive for this business, now would be a good time to hire some more people. So maybe you hire 5 people a month instead, and you can just step it through just a few months. You'll notice down at the bottom here, the staff numbers increasing. And the pressure on staff is beginning to come back down again. And this is the rate of problems from the clients, and that's not increasing as it was. So we can maybe increase the number of clients per month. Maybe I ought to put that up to about 8. Things are going really well, so let's really go for it and try and win some business and get something going really well. Oh dear me, it's all gone horribly wrong again, hasn't it? So we've got pressure built up on staff, problems with clients, the client loss rate has increased, and we did okay for a while, but then it started tailing off. So that's just a quick demonstration of how all the models basically work in the same way. You've got a red time series, which is a base case, and you've got a blue time series, which is the result of your decisions, basically. And you can play with, they all work the same way. All okay with that? Any questions at all? Okay. Okay, we're going on a few slides. Okay, so just a reminder, I showed you about this standard template that captures many kinds of situation, and I mentioned that there are similar systems in government and non-business cases. We looked at this law firm structure with clients at the top, services and lawyers on the supply side on the left, and we looked at this restaurant, and what I hoped to do was to have you grow this restaurant business for me, but I can't do that. So I'll switch over once again to just show you what the restaurant structure looks like. I don't want you to worry about the details of this structure, but here, just scroll down a bit. This is the restaurant's customer base. And the customer base comes from a surrounding population who might want to use the restaurant. And if you do well, you win customers. If you do badly, customers go away. So an example of doing badly is if you haven't got enough staff in the restaurant to make sure everyone is well served, then customers will actually flow back over here. Now, you can actually expand your market. We talked about customers being won and being lost, but they're being won and lost from and to somewhere. And the somewhere is a potential customer base in the area around the restaurant. And that's what this stock is here. Now, you can actually increase that by adding to your menu. So you've got a menu down here. You're offering 30 menu items. And one of your decisions over here is to change the menu. So you expand the market you could serve, and then you have to make sure you've got enough staff and you offer the right prices so that you do actually get customers coming to you. And down at the bottom we have the stock here is the restaurant staff, and this is the number of seats in the restaurant. And all this bit in the middle right, all that area there, that's basically the income statement, the profit and loss, just telling you about revenue and costs. Yeah. This particular version is read-only, so you can only see the structure. If anyone particularly wants, I can send you a link to the open model where you can see everything. So, sure, yes. This is our public version that we don't want to give everything away, okay? But if anyone wants to see the working model underneath, I can get that for you. All right. Okay. Right. So let's go on then. The model I just showed you was for a single restaurant. Now, I spent most of my professional strategy career in the restaurant and hotel industry. We did not just run one restaurant, we ran 300. We ran 200 hotels of one kind. We ran, the company I think still operates 7 or 8 different chains of restaurants. So if you want to move from a single restaurant to a restaurant company, you've effectively just got to photocopy that. You've got to photocopy it 300 times. And that's your restaurant business. Now, you can simplify that by dividing your restaurants up into different kinds. You might have big ones and medium ones and small ones. So we might have 100 big ones and 150 medium ones and 50 small ones. So you would only have to photocopy the structure 3 times for the 3 different kinds of restaurant, and then multiply it by 100, and then you've got a restaurant business. Did you follow that? That may have been a bit complicated. Yeah. Absolutely. If we're in the same city, then you have to worry about where the customers are coming from, because back on the model, this thing here turns out to be really important. This is the remaining potential customers. That's people who are the kind of customers who should want your restaurant, but are not currently using it. They're going somewhere else, right? Or they're not going out to restaurants at all. And in many, many cases, the potential customer base is a really important number. In some of my other presentations, I've got some data on Starbucks performance from 2000 through to 2012. And there was a particular time in 2008 where Starbucks performance collapsed. Their profitability dropped very, very sharply. And it turned out that they did exactly what you just said. They built too many restaurants. They built 500 too many restaurants, which even for a company the size of Starbucks is rather a big mistake to have made. So what they were basically doing was they were adding more and more restaurants to try and serve this last little bit of the potential customer base. But of course, most of the people who want to go to a Starbucks have already got one. So what would happen is they would open a new Starbucks. That new Starbucks would get lots of sales and lots of profits. But of course, where have those people come from? Well, they've come from the old one on the next corner of the city block, right? So it looks like you're being successful, but actually all you're doing is you're killing your own business up the street. As I say, this potential customer base turns out to be very important in lots and lots of cases. So let me just ask, has anyone any examples of types of business that they would like to just practice this with? Any other kinds of business that you're familiar with? Yeah.
What does churn means? I'm sure you know.
Churn.
Churning in ITC industries, to change the customers from one mobile to another operator, provider.
Right, okay.
That's called churning.
Yeah. Okay, so if we think about a simple example everybody understands is the cell phone industry, right? So this thing here is the subscribers to the cell phone network. This thing here, the product range is the range of services that you could take from the cell phone network. They're usually bundled in different tariffs. So on this tariff you can get this, this and this. On that tariff you can get that, that and that. But they're basically different services. So making phone calls, sending text messages, downloading data. Okay, so that's the product range. The people who operate the cell phone business, you've got call center people for selling packages to customers and for dealing with customer support. You've got engineers making sure that the network actually operates and runs. So you've got different kinds of staff, and the capacity is the network of base stations and the total call volume that network can carry. So in technology cases, we very often describe capacity in terms of the volume of activity it could handle. Your technologists could tell you how many base stations there are and how many connections there are between those base stations, but from the point of view of the management of the business, that's not the number they really want to know. They want to know how many calls can we handle. And there's a strategic issue about how much capacity you provide relative to the peak demand volume. So let me go back up to the generic version of this. So this capacity here is the capacity of the base stations to take calls and the networks between the base stations, right? If that is less than the demand that comes from people wanting to make calls, what happens? You know, as a phone call user, what do you find happens? Yeah, there's a problem. You can't complete the call, or the call drops, or you're trying to send a text message and the text message doesn't get through, or you're trying to download data and it's slow. Yeah, the capacity determines how much you can supply. Customers create the demand, and the quality of your experience as a customer. So the question from over here was, what about churn? Well, churn is subscribers leaving you. because of some reason or other. I will come on to the new generation issue in just a moment. So, for example, my provider in the UK 18 months ago decided to raise the price of their tariffs. And they increased the price not just for new subscribers, but they put the price up for existing subscribers even though they already had a contract. They just phoned me up to renew my contract. What do you think I said? Get lost, right? So that decision to do something about the price caused me and many thousands of other people to leave. So I'm going to another provider in about 3 weeks' time. So that's an example of churn being caused by a price decision. Where I live, even though it's not a big town, but it's a town, I think population of 15,000. Where I live, I can't always get a signal. So the capacity of the network relative to my demand means that the quality is poor. So again, I'm going to go. Right. So this supply-demand balance causes customers to leave. But the question asked was a bit different. Cell phone companies are about to roll out 4G services. Right? If this is the 3G customer base, you want them to leave the 3G customer base and join the 4G customer base. So the way we'd do that is we would have another copy of this for the part that relates to the 4G, and we would have a pipe going out of here, leaving the customers of the 3G customer base and going into the customer base for 4G. Okay? But the rest of the structure is essentially the same. So what happens is that when you get a generational change in the product, the whole existing customer base for all competitors becomes the potential customer base for the new service. Follow? Yeah, exactly. Any other examples people would like to think about? Yes? Oil companies. Okay. Right. It just so happens that that's what's coming up next.
So we have a microphone, so if you have any questions, just wait for the microphone so that they can hear also in the web stream. Thanks.
So the question was, how do we adapt the generic structure for an oil company? And when I listed the standard stocks, the standard resources for almost all companies, you probably noticed that the oil company had a lot of exceptions. It's not just one or two things are different for an oil company, a lot of things are different. So here's the generic structure. These are the proven reserves. This is the amount of oil that I have proven exists in the fields where I've made discoveries. And I pump that oil out at a rate. This is the extraction rate. Now, that oil joins all the other oil from all the other producers, and it goes to a market, and there is a demand for oil on that market, and that determines the oil price. So the price multiplied by how much I extract gives me my revenue. Where did that come from? Well, it came because I have engineers and geologists who go out and they do seismic tests and they do drill tests and they do all kinds of other things. And they say, we think that this oil field had 1 million barrels in it. We've now done the tests and it looks like it's 1.2 million. So we thought it was 1 million. And it moves over here and it becomes 1.2 million. So this is the evaluation rate. Now that turns out to be very important indeed. In 2005, Shell suffered a severe fine from the US Securities and Exchange Commission because they misstated that number. They actually said that they had, I think it was more oil than they actually had, or less, but either way, they got it wrong. And that was not a financial reporting error. It was an error that happened because they had failed to do that properly. And I'll say a little more about that in a moment. Where those unproven reserves come from is they come from discoveries. So we have the right to drill for oil off the coast of Brazil, let's say. So we've got drill ships drilling for oil. They find a field which we think might have 1 million barrels in it. And then there's a lot of work goes on to prove that it's actually 1.2 million. So there's the discovery, there's the evaluation, and we do different things to do that, and that, and that. It happens that oil rigs are involved in all of those stages, but there are other things we need as well. So first of all, we need staff, and we need different types of staff, and we need staff of different levels. And we hire staff to make it possible to do those 3 jobs. Now, the mistake that Shell made was that they did not have enough of the engineers and geologists with enough experience to do that correctly. That's why they made that mistake. And the problem is, we were asked the question earlier about delays. If you find yourself in 2005 with not enough experienced engineers, when did you not hire them? 2005, I find out I haven't got enough engineers. When did I fail to hire them? At least 5 years before, 10 years before. We'll come back to that, but that's the mistake. And there's a 5 or 10 year delay there. You know, 10 years later, you're suffering the consequences of a mistake you made 10 years before. And it turned out that it wasn't just Shell who made that mistake. The whole industry did the same thing. So Shell's response to that error was to announce a campaign to hire 1,000 experienced petroleum engineers. Does that sound like a big number or a small number, or? Quite big. The entire United States university system creates about 300 petroleum engineers per year. So Shell was trying to hire in one go 3 years of output from the entire US university system. And it was widely accepted at the time that this could not be done. It's impossible. So there's the staff. Now we need capacity, but we need different types of capacity to do these things. We need different kinds of oil rigs. We need different equipment on the oil rigs. This thing here requires extraction equipment, which is extremely expensive. It's just horrendously expensive. These are essentially self-operating oil well heads that sit on the bottom of the ocean under 1,000 meters of water, and they pump the oil out. If you remember the disaster in the Gulf of Mexico, you can see what happens when that goes wrong. So you've got to have enough of the right types of equipment. If you've got enough staff and enough equipment, then you can actually generate the extraction rate. That generates your revenue, but extraction means you've also got to transport the stuff, and that's going to cost you money. Staff and capacity drive your E&P costs here, and there's your profit. It's a highly simplified picture of an oil company, but it's got the essential elements on it. And if you were to work on this in practice, there would be a lot of work going into the details inside these pieces to figure it out. Okay. Have I answered your question okay? All right. So that would apply to mineral companies. It also applies if you're in the agricultural business. You replace this with farmland and your product ranges, your crops or your livestock that you grow on the land. Yeah.
On this particular model, but I'm sure it applies to others too, maybe for brevity and lack of space, but I don't see any return influence from any of the variable on it onto the, because in the end some decision will be based upon the, for example, the proven reserves. As they go down, I might be investing more into capacity to do exploration, creating some of the circularity that would make this dynamic.
Sure, absolutely. There are 2 or 3 categories of major feedback effects. The first category is that there's feedback within the system. We looked at self-reinforcing feedback around the customer base for Facebook, self-reinforcing feedback around the staff base in the IT company. So you've got feedback in the system itself. You have policy feedback where management look at some performance output number and they say, oh, our revenue isn't good enough, we need to spend more money on new discoveries, or we need to spend more money evaluating our fields. Or they say, we're not making enough profit, let's cut our hiring rate. Right? And you see where that got you, right? We're not making enough profit, let's cut the hiring rate. Or we're not making enough profit, let's cut the maintenance expenditure. Okay. But I think the particular feedback you were talking about in particular was the financial feedback, which is that this is the cash flow that enables you to spend all this money on the left-hand side in the first place. So the business is a money-making machine, and you can extract a cash flow from that and give it back to investors at a certain rate. But you have to feed back some of that cash back into the beginning so that the system is sustained and can grow itself. Okay? How are we doing? All right? Any other questions people have? Okay, I mentioned that, this slide's not in the deck, by the way. I mentioned earlier that the same principles apply to other situations, so I just thought I'd show you this one on the export trade sector. This is the sector of very small individual traders in the northwest of Nigeria. This is on the southern boundaries of the Sahara. It's in the Sahel region. It's a very arid area, but there is a relatively thriving population of people, and they do grow things. The people in Niger, I believe they breed cattle. The people in the Nigeria side of the border, they grow groundnuts, sorghum, and some other things, and they process the leather that comes from the cattle that are produced in Niger. So we've got Nigerian people who want to take their goods over the border to Niger, and we've got people in Niger wanting to bring their goods across the border into Nigeria. So this is the customer base. As far as the trading system is concerned, traders are the customer base. They are the people placing demand on the export system. And it's grown very slowly because it's difficult. It is just it's very difficult to be an exporter in northern Nigeria. If you get more people exporting, then they make more attempts to cross the border each day, right? There are some great videos showing the queues of trucks at borders, border crossings in the south of Nigeria, and those queues can build up to 3 days. It can take 3 days for a truck to get across the border in the southwest of Nigeria. This is the northwest, where you're talking about people with small trucks and hand cars. So that gives rise to border delays. If it takes too long to get across the border, you've got your crop in the van, you're trying to get across the border, and your crop deteriorates, it gets bad, so you've wasted your time, you've lost your crop, so you go home and you say to yourself, I'm not going to try again, right? So I was here, I've now left. I've given up trying to be a trader. So what do we need for that customer base to grow? Well, we need enough roads and we need enough border posts. So across Africa at the moment, there is a massive road development program. In the next, I think it's the next 10 years, it could be the next 5 years, it's expected that the road network in sub-Saharan Africa will multiply by 10 times. It's not going to grow by 10% or 20% or 50%. It's going to multiply by 10 times. In the last 10 years, China has built more roads than the United States has. So that's the kind of rate at which development can proceed. So if you're an aid agency, this work is done for aid agencies. And what they do, people like the World Bank, they finance the development of road networks so that traders can trade. And they also help build the capacity of the crossings themselves. So I can drive my truck up to the border, there are some buildings there, there are customs officials there. Can I actually get through the border? Well, only if there are enough crossings and only if there are enough border officials. So that sets the limits on the capacity and that gives rise to the delays. If all this works, then the trading volume goes up. If it doesn't, it stays down, and that's a bad thing. It's a well-known fact in international development that growth of trade is a strong way of lifting countries out of poverty. It just seems to be true. This case brings up an interesting one, though, in that it also features some things we might call negative resources. These are bad things that we want less of. So it is common in these situations for the government to announce that the export of certain goods is banned. So there's a rice shortage in Nigeria, and the Nigerian government bans the export of rice because we want it all in the country to feed our own people. It pretty much always turns out to be a mistake to do that, because by doing that you're actually making it impossible for people to bring other goods back instead of rice. So you're stopping your people getting the things that they would like to import because you've banned exports. So we've got banned products. The other thing that happens, the north of Nigeria is quite a zone of conflict. This is where there's a lot of terrorist activity. So the security forces have checkpoints on the roads. And of course, the more checkpoints there are, the more it stops you getting to the border. So I could get to the border in time to reach the market and sell my goods, but I get stopped 4 times on the way, which means by the time I get to the market's closed and I can't sell my goods, so I don't go. And the same happens on the down on the capacity side. One small trader was asked how many documents they had to complete to get across the border, and the answer was 13. Now, if you want to export goods and you've got to fill in 13 documents, that's not helpful. And then you get to the border, and it's not just a customs official who's going to stop you. there's a passport controller who's going to stop you, there's a health controller who's going to stop you, there's a trading standards person who's going to stop you. So you've got multiple agencies stopping you and actually making it difficult for you to get across the border. In our developed trading systems, we combine those things into just one or two officials. So there's a passport control and there's a customs control, full stop, that's it. And lastly, of course, there are corrupt officials who will ask you for money and take your money from you, so you don't make any profit, so you won't go and trade. And because we've got corrupt officials, we also have duties. If the government imposes excess duties, then you don't make enough money to trade. And we need access to finance, customs markets. So there's an architecture of the export trading system. And the point I want to make, this whole session is about repeatable structures. Now that is true whether you're trying to export from Nigeria or Brazil or Rome or China. The only thing that's different is that a lot of these negative things are very small or don't exist, and a lot of the positive things are already very well developed, so we don't have the delays. Right? The export trading system is essentially very efficient for us wanting to export from Italy or from the UK, but it's exactly the same structure. There's nothing fundamentally different about the structure from Nigeria to here. So if we want to solve the export trading challenge in numerous countries, we can start from this architecture and configure it for the particular conditions that apply in those different cases. Feedback, yeah, okay. Here's the virtuous feedback structure that we would like to have happen. If you have more people exporting, the market they're exporting to will develop. More people will want to buy from that market. Therefore, more income will be made, which will encourage more people to trade. That's the virtuous circle of trade growth in these countries. There have been some really good examples. I think it's Kenya who export a lot of flowers to Europe. Does that sound right for anyone who? I think it's Kenya who's made a real big industry out of exporting flowers to Europe. Now, that probably started with one quite good flower farm in Kenya who discovered that they could go and approach a supermarket chain in the UK or Germany or Italy and say, you know, we can do better flowers than the Dutch can at lower prices. They were successful. There's lots of other land in Kenya suitable for growing flowers, so more people start growing flowers, and they go and see other supermarket businesses in the UK and Germany and Italy, so they start exporting more flowers, and more people make more profit, so more people start growing flowers. There will be market limits. There'll be a market balancing feedback limit that caps your ability to grow that market. But the one we're worried about here is this one. This is the one that says, I'm a farmer who grows groundnuts in the north of Nigeria, and I see other farmers who go over the border into Niger, they sell their groundnuts, so I go too. The problem is, I and another 20 people have decided to go as well, so I've now got lots more people trying to get across the border, but the border's capacity can't handle any more people, so this is a balancing feedback loop round here. And the difficulty for the aid agencies is that there's lots of other parts to this system. So the market that you're selling into has got its own development dynamic. The industry that is generating the product has got its own dynamic as well. So we've got to widen this picture a little bit to deal with that. And you've got many agencies trying to do different things to improve the same system. I didn't realize how lucky I've been to work in the business sector. In the business sector, there's usually somebody in charge, right? The chief executive may think they're in charge, but sometimes it's somebody else. But usually there's someone in charge. And the person in charge can say, yes, we're going to fix this and fix that and fix this, right? In the public sector and in the voluntary sector, there is often no single person in charge. In this case, there are at least 10 different agencies trying to do different things to improve this. So the German aid agency is, they've got a big program to train customs officials. The World Bank is building roads. The UK agency is trying to help the government reduce the number of documents you need. But no one is looking at the whole picture. No one can see what everybody else is doing. I mean, they've got the list of everything that they're doing, but they can't see the effect of what everyone's doing. So where I'm trying to get them to is let's all look at the same picture. We've got a working model of the trade system as well. If you go to our YouTube channel, you'll find some videos on that. And these are the models of the cases I've shown you already. So that's the full Ryanair model. That's the full IT support model. There's a manufacturing company model in there as well that you can play with. And all of the structures are built on a standard set of worksheets, which you can use as well. So you can go and have a look at those worksheets. Okay, so that's pretty much got us to where I wanted to get with whole organization structures. What I just wanted to cover in the last part of the session is that very often the challenge we're asked to help with is not the whole enterprise, it's a particular piece of the enterprise. So it could be, how do we help Shell with its staff development pipeline? How do we help Ryanair with its competition against other airlines for customers? How do we help a pharmaceutical company with its product development pipeline? And what we find is that we've got the same thing again. These partial systems have got standard structures as well. So I'd just like to share a few of those with you. And the way they relate to this is that they can be bolted on, they can be attached to this core structure here. So the one example is what's known as quality attributes or qualities of resources. So it's not enough for Shell to have petroleum engineers. They have to be experienced petroleum engineers. Right? That's an attribute of the engineers. It's not enough for Ryanair to have travelers who are customers. They want travelers who travel a lot. So they would like people who travel 5 times a year, not people who travel 1 time per year. Get the idea? Products, we would like products that appeal to lots of customers rather than products that only appeal to a few customers. We would like machines that have got a high volume of output, or they produce good quality product rather than a low volume of output and low quality. Many of these stocks, many of these resources develop through stages. The staff pipeline is the obvious one, right? Junior, middle, senior. But pipelines apply to other assets as well. There is the important question of competition. Now, competition clearly is vital in corporate situations. Ryanair is winning customers who are being lost by other airlines, or they are winning new customers faster than other airlines. In the 4G network situation. One cell phone operator is winning 4G subscribers faster than their competitors. So that's competition. But you compete for other things too. You compete for staff. It's very common in the information systems support area, for example, that companies find it difficult to hire the staff they need because they go and work for Google or Facebook instead. Why work for boring EDS if you can go and get a job with Google? Surely that must be more fun. Right? In the non-profit sector, in the government sector, you compete for staff. You also compete very often for sources of funding. I've been doing some work for charities working in the poverty sector, and if you're trying to help people escape from homelessness, you want people to give you money so that you can do that. They're called donors. They are money providers. There's a very big housing charity in the UK called Shelter. They are the biggest housing charity in the country, and they have a very big population of donors, including me, who regularly give them money. And because I'm giving money to Shelter, I am not giving money to other housing charities. Then we need to deal with policy. We've talked about policy, looking at performance and deciding what to do based on the performance. And there are intangible factors to deal with. There are capabilities to worry about as well. So these are all things that can be added as part of this system structure. But it really helpfully, these structures are useful on their own as well. They can be very useful just to solve that problem or just to be a strategy solution for that part of the business. You don't have to do the whole enterprise. So let me give you this example of customers developing through stages. Down here we've got unaware customers, and what we would like is we would like them to be aware of our product. So this stock here is people who have heard of the product. The next one is people who are informed about the product, they understand it, but they don't buy it. The next stock is people who buy the product, but they also buy competitor products. And the final stock is loyal customers who only buy this product. So let's carry out a quick survey right now. How many people in this room, if they want a soft drink and Coca-Cola is available, they will always ask for Coca-Cola? How many people would that be? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that number at the top is 4. How many people in this room, if they want a soft drink and Coca-Cola is available, they will sometimes ask for Coca-Cola, they'll sometimes ask for Pepsi, they'll sometimes ask for Fanta or something else, or water? How many people would put themselves there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 20. About 20 odd people. Right. But Coca-Cola is possible, right? That's a very important issue. Coca-Cola is one of the things you might choose. How many people would put themselves in the middle? They understand why people might drink Coca-Cola, but they never do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so if there are 5 people there, how many people in this room have heard of Coca-Cola, but they've no idea why anyone would want to drink it? 2, right? And how many people have never heard of Coca-Cola? Okay, we've just done a survey and we've populated that chain with the number of people who are in it. And Coca-Cola is an extreme example. There are very few companies that have got so many people up here. Very few companies. But look how long it's taken them to get there. Right? That's a long, long process. So here's the structure. Ah, right. Okay. If you apply it to system dynamics, what you find, and why I'm pretty sure I know the solution for system dynamics, what I'm sure is that if we were to take 1,000, no, make the numbers easier, 100 potential users of system dynamics, I would put 98 of them in there. At least 98. Right? Maybe 1.5 in there. Maybe 0.4 in here. And 0.1 in there. That's our problem. That's our problem. Yeah. But that problem is, we've got a marketing challenge. That's simply where we are. Craig, I'm sure, has got some wisdom to offer on this one.
I would point out that that's after 54 years, number one.
Yeah.
And number two is that unfortunately, information alone is not nearly enough, because it, as you observed correctly earlier, it requires a level of expertise that very few people will ever attain.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think what that shows is you can't do with system dynamics what Coca-Cola has done with sugar water.
True. I would say, though, we should not surrender to this, okay? When we say that these people here are informed, it doesn't mean they know how to do it. It means they understand why it's useful, okay? This is customers we're talking about. This is not providers, this is customers. So this is people who understand that this thing might be useful. And people have done this with complicated things before. Yeah. They've done it with business process engineering. Business process engineering is not easy. They've done it with Six Sigma. They understand why Six Sigma is useful. They've done it with systems engineering. Systems engineering is not easy, right? But they understand that it's useful. They're doing it right now with big data. So it is not the case. We should not assume that it's impossible to get people in there. We can get people in there. And when people are in there, then it begins to take off. So there are sectors where this understanding has been created. So quite a lot of people in the project management world understand what system dynamics can do for them. They can't do it, but they know it's useful and they know how to get it done. Yeah.
Okay. This chain sparkles some curiosity about as like business strategies, or how a company can enlarge their disloyal customer base by differentiating their product offers. And I think an example come to mind as Apple. Apple, yes, because they were heavily reliant on loyal customers in the early days, and anyone who's owned an iMac or even a Macintosh would testify to that. Later in the years, they just changed strategies or enhanced their strategies by say, why should we only have loyal customers? Let's just offer something that people can buy that compete with others. And that came the iPod, which incidentally was also a technological breakthrough and filled the market niche that was vacant. But today then they use their differentiated multi-platform products to force people to become loyal customers, because then you are almost obliged, if you have an iPhone, to have a tablet and to access the cloud, and therefore you are turned, regardless of your ambitions, into loyal customers. So that would be a very good strategy.
Well, let's pick up that example and just see how we would build on that, because you could fill that chain for the iPod. We're going back 15 years, is it? 15, 20? iPod, 15, 10. Okay. So 10 years ago, no one has heard of the iPod. Very few people have heard of the iPod. Very few people are aware. The geeks have heard this might be really cool. But then Apple starts doing some very clever marketing, and suddenly we get millions of people running up this pipeline, and they end up there. They end up right at the top in the loyal customer base. So now, to pick up your point, we've got millions of people in the loyal customer base. People tell their friends that an iPod's really great, so that stock drives that flow and that flow. And because the thing clearly works and is really cool and nice, that drives that flow. So we've got reinforcing feedback pushing people up that channel for the iPod. So now we've got millions of people up here with an iPod. So we now launch the iPhone, and once again, we've got millions of people down here who've never heard about it. But we've got iPod owners who say, this must be really cool, I'm going to buy the iPhone. So you repeat that chain for the iPod, the iPhone, the iPad, and so on, right? And the stocks up at the top drive the flows not only for the same product but also for the next product in the story. Okay. As long as the satisfaction level's high, okay. One of many interesting features about this case is that other competitors have been able to succeed in spite of the power that Apple has. So Samsung has really, they sell more phones than Apple now, don't they? Yeah. By a lot. Okay. So it's not the case that just because you're the first, or just because your technology is amazing, or just because you're the coolest thing to have, you will have all the sales. That's not true. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Indeed, yeah, okay. So this decision here to actually buy it, that's actually quite a big decision. I never used any Apple product before I got the iPhone, but it was such a good phone that I did that. And I immediately got very annoyed because Apple wants to take over my life. So I am now going to replace my iPhone with another device because I'm not having Apple controlling everything I want to do. I'm not unacceptable. I'm quite happy for Google to control my life, but
yeah. Just sorry to interrupt, but just a service communication. The Wi-Fi should be working again now, so you can access it. Sorry.
Oh, cool. Excellent. All right. Yeah.
Can you say this, use the same chain also for services instead of product?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's a little bit different from my point of view, but just I would like to hear.
Yeah, you often have to adapt these structures. For example, if you're in the business of selling electricity, very few people are able to be disloyal customers of an electricity supplier. You have to buy your electricity from one supplier. You're probably a customer of only one cell phone provider at a time, right? So this box is empty. There may be some undecided customers who will change next time, but for the moment they are your customer here. For services, this is very common. You buy your service from one provider. Typically, people here. How many people here only use one bank? One bank. Yeah. So I buy my bank services from one bank. I buy some other financial services from others, but basically I bank with one company. And this chain works for banks. So this is people who bank with more than one bank, and this is people who bank with one. Consumers typically only use one law firm. They use one law firm for their buying their house or their will or for getting divorced or the various services they use. So in services, it can be adapted to those. Okay, right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah. 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 Sure. Okay, so there's a big difference between business to business and business to consumer, okay? And in business to consumer cases, companies use consumer marketing techniques to get people to understand what they want them to understand about the product. A good example there is BMW. Now, BMW does not sell to people on the basis of physical features of their product. They sell to people on the basis that a BMW is the ultimate driving machine. Is that the advertising campaign they use here? The ultimate driving machine, right? So what this means here, to be informed, is it means I understand that a BMW is the ultimate driving machine. I want to be seen driving the ultimate driving machine. I will want a BMW. It's got nothing to do with how many cylinders are under the bonnet or, yeah. So we use marketing techniques to tell people what we want them to think about the product. If we go to business, we are selling to professional purchasers. We're particularly with expensive things like IT support. So one of the companies I do some work with is a company called Schneider Electric, who sell complex power control systems for things like hotels. They sell a huge variety of electrical equipment, but one category of equipment is control systems for hotels and office blocks and that kind of thing. So 10 years ago, they basically went to the building designers and said, please specify our circuit breakers, please specify our switches, please specify our air conditioning control systems. And the designer would put all that together and hopefully the building would work. What Schneider Electric do now is they go to the building designer and say, please specify our power control system for the whole building. That is a solution. It's called a solution sale. So the people they want to make the decision are the building designers, the architects. In some cases, it might be the building owner. So if you're selling to a hotel chain, you actually sell to the hotel chain. but you're selling a solution. So what you're explaining to the client is not, you know, it's got 50 switches and it's got 5 thermostats and it's got so many kilometers of wire. What you're explaining to them is that this integrated system will ensure this level of comfort for the people who use the building, and it will reduce the energy consumption for a standard building, call that 100, to 87. And we can prove that. So the issue that shows is that when you're selling something complicated, a common tactic is to take one customer all the way up there, and then you use the information from the customer you've taken up there to bring all the other customers up behind. It's called a reference site. But they still have to be informed. The people who are going to make the purchasing decision need to understand what you want them to understand so that they make the purchasing decision. So you've just got to be careful to define what you mean by these states. Okay. Some companies are they're much smarter than this. For example, they don't bother with all this. They simply get people to actually have the product and have it in their hand, and then they will understand it. So they go straight in here, and that will bring all this other stuff behind. There's all kinds of clever tricks that the marketing world use. I'm a bit conscious of time, so let me just run on quickly. This is a model where you can try to build a consumer brand. You've got people moving forward. People forget and they move back down again. But this is something like Coca-Cola, but for a new product. And your challenge is to make back the money that you're spending on the product at the bottom. There's the working model. You can get online and have a try with that. All of the models, by the way, have the same bit at the beginning. It's sdl.re/m, and then there's a number after that, which is the code number for the model. And if you don't know what to do with them, there's a little video for each one, which is sdl.re/v with the same number after it. It's just a little video demo. Okay, competition. Competition focuses on customers in business cases. There are 3 standard structures by which competition works. We also have to worry about competition for staff. We might have to worry about sources of supply. We might be competing for investors, and public services compete for staff, donors. They actually compete for the people they're trying to help, right? This might seem a bit bizarre, but there are many homeless charities who compete to win the attention of the homeless people themselves. Yeah, because the reason for that is that if they can show that they are helping 100,000 homeless people, that means that they can then go and win the competition for donors, which means that they get money, which means that they can help more homeless people. Right. That's fine. Yeah. So here's the structure for Type 1 competition. This is the competition to win potential customers for the first time. So this is potential customers for 4G services. This is customers who are buying 4G services from us, and this is customers who have subscribed to 4G services with somebody else, right? That's Type 1 competition, and I'll give a demonstration of this after lunch. Important point, you can create new potential customers. Right? That happens. New people become potential customers. There's a working model of this for restaurant competition at that link. And there are other structures for Type 2 rivalry, which is switching customers between us, and Type 3 rivalry, which is when you've got no loyal customers. So things like gasoline. How many people here would only ever buy Esso petrol? Anyone? You did, yeah, once upon a time. Right? Petrol is one of those commodities that even consumers are very rarely loyal to. So all gasoline buyers is the stock, and we're competing for a share of their purchase occasions. You're not moving people. They are always disloyal customers, and they will buy from whoever is most convenient, whoever is cheapest, whoever gives them the latest benefits of some kind. Moving on to intangibles, this is a very common structure. One of the reasons customers leave us is if quality, service, or value is poor. New customers do not have any direct experience of that. They can read about it, they can ask their friends, but they don't know themselves. The only thing they can go on is your reputation. So quality of service, if we keep on doing it, it will build up our reputation. If we do badly, it will damage our reputation, but it's reputation that drives the win rate. And the reason that that's important is that these are different groups of people. So these people make that decision for different reasons than these people make that one. Yeah? Reputation and morale are in the IT support case, and what's happening here is that the poor client support quality with the problems that it creates is damaging our reputation, which is why over here we want to keep winning 6 or 7 clients per month, but we can't because word has got around that we are not very good. Okay? If you're a mid-scale building company in a city and you know that you need an IT system for managing your stock of raw materials or something, and you go and try to figure out who you should get that IT support system from, and you talk to your friends who are other builders in the same city, and they say, you know, don't touch Stefano's company, you know, it's absolutely rubbish, they really let me down, right? But fortunately, Stefano has fixed this problem. He's got the quality back up again, and actually he will build
That
up
was
the
the example of the Wi-Fi.
Okay, and we've got a morale loop down here. The reason that we keep losing experienced staff, even when the pressure has eased in some cases, is that staff are now, their morale is wrecked, and they're going to go. Okay, so this slide just tells the story. We add clients, we keep hiring slowly, pressure builds up, so people leave faster, and there's that working model for that one. Okay. The last example concerns capability. Now, capability is different than skill. If you work in any organization, you can audit the skills that people have got. So McDonald's, if you go to McDonald's, you notice they've got the little pins on their collar that says, you know, I'm a level 5 customer service person. You know, I know everything there is to know about customer service. Capability for a whole organization is more than the sum of skills. You need individual skills. You also need effective business procedures. So McDonald's works well because the manual tells you how to do it, right? That manual has taken 50 years to write, and it keeps on being rewritten. You also need the data to do the procedure. So the equipment in a McDonald's store tells you when the fries are ready. It tells you when to get the burgers out of the freezer. Right? The IT tells you what to do. So capability is skills plus procedures plus data. This particular case concerns the growth of a retail business. This is the expansion of a supermarket chain or a restaurant chain. And a key capability for these companies is the ability to find, acquire, and develop the best location sites that they can. I guess McDonald's has got quite a good restaurant site somewhere in the middle of Rome here, popular corner of the city. That's no accident. It's no accident that McDonald's owns that store and some small local fast food company doesn't. And it's not just about paying more. It's not just about paying more. They may even have paid less because it comes from their capability to do this. The company I worked for, who grew the 7 restaurant chains, had a department responsible for acquiring sites. And by the time we had acquired 500 retail units, nobody could get anywhere near us for acquiring them. We always got the best site. We always paid less. We always opened it faster than anybody else could. Right? Always, always. And that's because there's a learning loop here. For those of you who are feeling a lack of feedback loops, there's a feedback loop here. I start off not very good, which means it takes me a long time to open a store, 30 months to open a store. But the more new stores I open, the better I get at doing it. So this is my incremental experience from opening more stores. So initially, because I know not very much, I can learn a lot. So my capability increases, my lead time goes down, I open stores faster, and here's the difference it makes to my profit. I think this is over a 5-year period in total. So at the end of 5 years, I'm making 2.3 million instead of 2.0. That's because I'm operating 232 stores, not 186. That's a capability learning feedback structure that you can replicate across many different functions, many different industries. Okay, there's the story I've just explained. There's a working model of that as well. So here's where we started. We have these issues caused by these features of the way we try to do system dynamics, and here are the bad consequences. This is the alternative. The alternative is that you do progressive, stepwise causal analysis with data, with time charts. And you continually do quantified modeling. You never move on to the next stage without demonstrating that you can simulate up to this point. If you do that, it takes less time, less effort, and you continue giving people benefits. We're not waiting for the end for benefits to emerge. We get benefits all the way through the process, and it's cheaper. Consequences that you get long-lived models. The model I've done there for the IT support company is a model they can still use. It's still relevant. It still tells them how their business works. It can become a management control system for the business. And that means that they get a continuous stream of benefits. You get repeatable models. I can take that model to lots of other companies and solve very similar problems. And for the professionals, particularly for our young professionals, it means they can develop their skills at a pace where they're comfortable. We're not asking them to be masters of the universe right away. They can go and do a customer pipeline for somebody, or they can go and do a staff pipeline for somebody, or they can do a competition structure for somebody relatively early on. And if that all happens, hopefully we get faster adoption.
Thank you, Kim. I will give Kim a round of applause for his excellent lectures. So thanks a lot. Thank you. Just before approaching lunch and before giving place for some questions, I think that Kim's lecture introduced very well the session for tomorrow. I'm sure that even in the session, at the end of the session of today, there will be space for some discussion on your proposition, I would say. And so it was really a brilliant lecture that you gave us today, and I thank you for that. So I would leave space for some questions before lunch, if there are any. It seems that everyone is hungry, so fine. So that's perfect.
I hope we've exchanged at least a little bit of discussion as we've been going along.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. I think so. It was more interactive, and it was okay.
There's few enough of us that we can talk over lunch and over coffee as well. So.
All right. So before lunch, again, just one more reminder. Again, if you want to register, let me say kind of register, or anyway join us for the dinner tonight, please leave your name at the registration desk. Okay, thank you, and have a nice lunch. See you here in 1 hour, more or less. Thanks. You can leave the computers here. There will be always someone. Don't worry. Okay.